March 5th, 1770, shots rang out on King Street in Boston, Massachusetts. 5 American colonists were dead, including a sailor and rope maker named Crispus Attucks, a martyr and a symbol of the fight for freedom. Well, what does the Boston Massacre have to do with Norfolk, Virginia? It's one of the many things that gives Norfolk, Virginia its rich history. And we're going to talk about that, 4 other things that make it great, as well as 5 things that you may not wish to deal with. So let's get started. We're talking about the pros and the cons, the goods and the others, the yeses and the nos of living in Norfolk, Virginia. Pro number 1, arts and culture. There's a conglomerate, a syndication called the 7 Venues here in Norfolk, and one of those is the Attucks Theater. Named for Crispus Attucks, the sailor and rope maker who lost his life at the Boston Massacre. Crispus Attucks was a African-American escaped slave and part American Indian who was a whale fisherman or something along those lines up in Boston. And he had just gotten back from the Bahamas and he was part of the protest at the square, and he gets shot by British soldiers, and next thing you know, we have a revolution. Well, we have a theater here that is named in his honor. It's the Crispus Attucks Theater. It's actually called the Crispus Attucks Cultural Center, and it was originally funded and designed in 1919 by African-American entrepreneurs. Vibrant history, very active in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, and 50s with acts such as Cab Calloway and Red Fox. It was apparently really popular and considered the Apollo Theater of the South. Sometime after the 50s, it shut down and it was kind of it was inactive. And in 1982, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. It was refunded and rehabilitated in 2004, and it's been a part of the Norfolk entertainment scene ever since. So as I said, the 7 Venues in Norfolk, it's a city-owned conglomerate of the entertainment that's around here, and that includes different acts such as the Virginia Symphony, the Virginia Ballet, the Virginia Opera, the Virginia Stage Company, Broadway plays, Bayou Boogaloo, and Norfolk Harbor Fest. So all sorts of things that are really important here for the arts and entertainment. Norfolk, Virginia really is the entertainment and cultural hub for the 7 cities within Hampton Roads. Con number 1, tunnels and tolls. There's a lot of tunnels and bridges in the area, and they are natural choke points. You're going to see slowdowns for traffic and accidents. Rush hour can be somewhat bad on some of the choke points, especially like the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. You just have to plan around it. And sometimes you could have an accident in one of these tunnels where there's just not a lot of space. And if you have an accident, they need to get a tow truck in there. That tunnel will go to a standstill, go full stop until they clear it. And that could be 15, 20 minutes of just stopped traffic, and it's just piling up behind there. And it could take hours to clear out afterwards. You just got to be aware of it. It can be a drawback because there's so many tunnels and bridges in the area that really can cause some slowdowns. It's mostly the tunnels, because for some reason, people show up at those things and they just slow down. Now, granted, some of them have decreased speed limits. They go from 55 to 35. Sure, you're supposed to slow down, but sometimes people go like down to 20, and I don't know why, but they just do. And then some stupid idiot comes up behind them, is doing 70 miles an hour and rear ends them. Guess what? You have an accident, and it can cause some slowdowns. The other thing is some of these tunnels and some of these bridges have tolls on them. And so what you need is you need to get one of these, an Easy Pass. So you could have either this one or you could have one of these with the little HOV thing. Makes a little clip when you go HOV on. In any case, the point of that is that if you're going over the bridge, hey, that little thing reads the transponder and you get billed. You get billed anywhere from $1.85 off peak to $2.33 peak. And that makes sense. If you don't have one of these and you go across, it's going to take a picture of your license plate and you're going to get a bill in the mail. And then your bill could be $6 each way. So make sure you get one of these. And to get one, there's several Easy Pass locations throughout town, or you can go to easypassva.com and get one. And you can also register your plate. And I've tested this. As long as you have an Easy Pass registered to your vehicle, and then it snaps a picture, it doesn't send you the bill as a non-plate. It just bills your account. It figures it out. Hey, that's great. Pretty cool. In any case, you want to make sure you get one of these, because otherwise it can really add up. The tolls are expensive as it is. You don't want to make it worse by having to pay 3 times the regular rate just because you're too lazy to go get an easy pass. Oh, and when it comes to the HOV, the 64 HOV lanes, the dedicated lanes in the middle, they're bi-directional. So mornings they go this way, afternoons they go that way. They're flow controlled. So if there's no traffic, they're 50 cents. And if there's an accident on the main line, it goes to $1.50. Well, if you and that's only during certain hours, but if you can have more than 2 people, it's HOV2, you can slip this thing to on, and when it zings you, you don't get a bill. So it's free if you do that. So that's kind of nice. My recommendation is that you go and get an easy pass for each of your cars. And that's the way I do it. And you just leave it in there and it's fine. Each one, they're going to bill you $30 per transponder to put on your account. That's not for the transponder. That's $30 in toll credit. And over time, so let's say you have 3 cars, you put 3 of those on, you're charged $90 to get 3 transponders, but it's $90 in tolls. And depending on how many tolls you go through in a week, that could take anywhere from a month to several months to burn through that money. But once it gets all the way down towards, let's say, whatever the threshold is, less than $20, you can control that. It'll then recharge. And you can change how much it recharges. I have mine set to $30, so every time it goes below, I have 3 transponders, it adds $30. So that's just what I do. For more information on the toll structure, go to driveert.com, and that's the organization that runs those is Elizabeth River Tunnels, driveert.com. Pro number 2, affordability. Let's compare the Norfolk, Virginia to San Diego, California. Holy cow, the cost of living here is significantly better. Whereas if you had an income and a lifestyle, if you had an income of $150,000 here in Norfolk, Virginia, you would have a certain standard of living. To have that same standard of living in California, it would require an income of about $250,000. Significantly different. Housing in Norfolk is 71% more affordable than San Diego. I'll say that again. Housing in Norfolk is 71% more affordable than San Diego. You compare it to DC, the numbers are similar, not nearly as extreme, but Norfolk is definitely more affordable than Norfolk. And compared to Virginia Beach, it's similar. Norfolk is slightly, the housing, the median home price in Norfolk is definitely lower than Virginia Beach. It's skewed a little bit because there's different property styles, but it is slightly better in Norfolk, although we will talk about cost of living in another time. The big takeaway on affordability is this. The median home price here in Norfolk is about $300,000. The E5 BAH without dependents is $1,600. You can afford a $300,000 home as an E5 for principal, interest, taxes, and insurance out of your BAH for the most part, assuming 30-year VA loan, no money down, 3% interest rate. Yeah, all that stuff. This is an assumption. It depends on the exact property for taxes and what your insurance is. Of course, full disclosure, this is not a quote, but you should be able to afford pretty much a $300,000 house. Do you want to is a whole nother discussion, and whether you should do is another discussion after that. So I'm not saying to go out and buy a $300,000 house as an E5. This is just a data point that it is much more affordable here in Norfolk. Try and go buy a median home price home in San Diego as an E5 without dependents and no roommates. Yeah, good luck. It's a lot better here. Con number 2, flooding. There are 3 types of flooding here. There's precipitation flooding, storm flooding, and tidal flooding. Precipitation flooding, that's when rainfall exceeds the ability of the storm sewer system to get rid of the water and it backs up and the roads get full. That's precipitation flooding. Storm flooding is when we have a storm coming through, either it's a hurricane or nor'easter, heavily dependent on the tide level and the direction of the wind and whether the water's coming in or out of the bay and the rivers. But it's heavily dependent on the tides. And when you have a storm coming in, if it hits us right, you can see flooding from the storm. Same thing with tidal flooding. That is just a fact that, phases of the tide, every 12 hours you get a new high and a new low. Sometimes those higher highs can exceed a normal high tide, so a king tide, a higher high tide. Those tides can sometimes exceed the seawall or maybe flood your yard or really go in. There are certainly some roads in the area where at a higher high tide, at a normal clear day, the tidal flooding will hit us just right and a road will get obstructed by flooding. That does happen here. That is definitely something to be aware of. The big thing there is never drive through standing water, right? Of course. But you have to be aware for that. Flooding can cause some damage. And if you're buying a home, you need to be aware that you're probably going to have to consider flood insurance. Some places require it. My house does not require it, but I have it by choice because I think it's a smart thing to do. And here's a thing that you probably hadn't thought of if you've never lived here before. Because of the low elevation and the high water table, and a lot of this area is built on old swampland, we don't have basements. For the most part, there are no basements in this whole area. So if you have lived in the Midwest or up north and you're accustomed to, hey, you have a basement, you might have even had a finished basement. We don't have basements. We just don't, because they would be flooded and full of water. So we don't have. Pro number 3, restaurants and nightlife. If you go down Granby Street in Norfolk, you're going to see door after door is a vibrant restaurant. There's stuff going on, people walking, there's people driving, and they're stopping and getting out and getting something to eat. There are some amazing restaurants there. Some of my favorites are 456 Fish, 219 Bistro, Leone's Italian. Oh, another one that I've never been to. I want to try this, but it just seems weird. The Grilled Cheese Bistro. I got to go try that one. So that's the one I'm going to recommend because I haven't tried it yet, and I want to go see that one. So but there's some great stuff to see. So pro number 3 is that the restaurants and nightlife on Granby Street are absolutely amazing. And if you have a place, let's say you're living right there, you could walk there every night. Oh, talk about arts and entertainment and cultural. Oh, what a great place. Con number 3, drivers. Oh my Lord, Interstate 64 around here. Sure, there are bad drivers everywhere, but I don't know what it is about 64. I'll be driving down the road, just minding my own business, and boom, somebody will blow my doors off. They're cutting across traffic, and you go, that is not how you drive a car. But they're doing it, right? So, keep it slow, be in the middle lane, the right lane, keep your cruise on, check your shoulder before you merge over. That might be somebody coming up pretty fast. So, their drivers can be pretty ridiculous around here, if you ask me. And in 64, you can have a lot of congestion traffic both ways, morning or night. Even with the HOV, you can get some backups going on. And then 64 into 564 takes you to the main gate over there at Naval Station Norfolk. You can get some pretty good backups from the gate traffic onto 564. Obviously, all the other bases in the area are going to have backups as well. It's just that for some reason that backup, it goes all the way out onto 564 because that's the feeder that's just going to the base. So you get a lot of backups on the interstates around there. And also you tend to get a lot of backups on the HRBT, the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. Friday afternoons going across, every afternoon going up towards the peninsula, you're going to get a backup. And from the peninsula coming down south in the mornings, same thing. And there's no HOV going through the tunnels or across the bridge. It's 2 lanes this way, 2 lanes that way. And pro number 4, waterfront living. If you want to live on the Lafayette River, Elizabeth River, you want to live on the bay, maybe right there off Willoughby Spit, there are some incredible opportunities, relatively affordable housing right there on the water. If you want to have a house where you have your boat tied up at your own personal pier right on the back of your house, you can do that here. For under $1 million, you can be right out on the bay. Good luck doing that somewhere else like San Diego or something. You're not going to be able to do that. But you can do that here in Norfolk. So it's a great opportunity. If you're a water lover like me, you have a boat, you keep it at your house, this is a great place to have a boat right at your house. Get it into the water. There's some things to be concerned with tides. If you have some concern, actually give me a call if you want to talk about that, because there are definitely some nuances to the difference between deep water access and deep water, and what somebody calls deep water, I might not call deep water, because I tell you what, if it's 4 inches at low tide, it is not deep water. I say if you can't get your boat out at low tide, it is not deep water, even though you might have 5 feet at high tide. So it might be a little extreme. But the point is that there's a difference between deep water and deep water access, and water view and water access. But there are a lot of great opportunities to be right on the water here in Norfolk. What a great place. Con number 4, professional sports. There's not much to speak of here. If you want to go see an NFL game, you're going to Washington, D.C. or down to Charlotte. And that's 4 or 6 hours drive. That's quite a bit. The Phillies, or not the Phillies, the Nationals are up in DC. There's just nothing. We don't have a professional sports team of that caliber here in Norfolk. What do we have? Well, we've got a AAA ball club, the Norfolk Tides. It's a farm team for the Baltimore Orioles. Used to be a farm team for the New York Mets. That's right there at Harbor Park. We also got the Norfolk Admirals. They're a farm team for the Edmonton Oilers. Used to be the farm team for the Anaheim Ducks. We have some great Division I sports in the area. We have Old Dominion University and Norfolk State University, both D1 schools, and there's a lot of great things to go see, whether it's football, basketball, wrestling. There's some great opportunities to go see some good sports in the area. But in the end, if you're looking for NFL or Major League Baseball, we don't have it here. Pro number 5, it's easier to get around. Let's compare Norfolk to San Diego. Can you imagine comparing the road traffic in Norfolk versus the road traffic in San Diego? It's much easier to get around here if you ask me. Same thing with mass transit. The mass transit system in Norfolk is not great. I mean, there are buses and there's the Tide, which is a very small train that doesn't really go many places. But we do have some mass transit options. And matter of fact, if you live, say, in downtown Ghent, there are a lot of walking options. Or downtown in Norfolk, there are walking options to get around. You can't really do that as well in San Diego. Obviously, there are some places you can, but it's just a different style of living here compared to there. Let's compare Norfolk to DC. Well, the roads here in Norfolk are much better to get around than DC. I've lived in that area. It can be a mess up in DC. Much better here. The metro system in DC is night and day compared to what we have here. So on that sense, DC wins, but on the roads, Norfolk wins. Lastly, let's compare Norfolk to Virginia Beach. Road system, it's about the same. The advantage Norfolk here is walking around if you're in the downtown Norfolk area. And con number 5, it doesn't snow here. We get 33 degrees and rain for weeks. It can be miserable. We're just finishing up the winter time now, and we had weeks on end of 33 degrees and rain. Meanwhile, right up the road in Richmond, they're having snowmageddon, and they're having to dig out of a foot of snow. All we're getting is constant rain. What's the benefit? You don't have to worry about school closures for snow. It's for rain, and we will actually have schools closed because the roads are flooded, and that's something to consider. Also, at that temperature, when you have that heavy rain, sometimes it's freezing rain or sleet. And you get these ice storms. We might not have snow, but we get ice storms. And when that happens, you get down trees and down power lines and power outages. And when you're trying to go to work and you see, wow, there's a tree down and there's a power line. What do? Don't touch it. That can kill you. It can cause some really damage. It can hurt. So don't go touching down power lines. You get an ice storm, it can still impact you negatively, but it's not snow. And that rain, that cold rain, it's just kind of miserable. So that's definitely a drawback. I miss the snow. And something else you see around here a lot of times are those Generac whole house generators. I wouldn't say they're common because they're pretty expensive, but I'm not surprised when I see them because there are a lot of times where all of a sudden you'll get a hurricane might come through and there are plenty of people who've lost power and they lose it for a week. Or an ice storm, same thing. Typically, most folks don't lose power for that long, but sometimes it happens. And one of those whole house generators, that's a big win if you can find a house with one of those, or you want to put one in. So there we are, 5 pros and 5 cons of why you do or do not want to live here in Norfolk, Virginia. I'm sure I missed something. Give me a comment down below. What do you think? What did I miss? What are the things that you really like or you really hate about living here in Norfolk? So help me out on the algorithm. Hit subscribe. Hit the like button, and I'm going to see you next time. And remember, when you need help with buying or selling real estate here in the Hampton Roads, Norfolk, Virginia area, you might need a wingman. Call me, your real estate wingman.